there's a lot of external noise out there, and there's a lot of things that say, do this, don't do that, buy this, don't buy that. Hello, today we're going to be talking about sanity checks. Do you guys have any sanity checks that you kind of go through in your own head? Kind of like this checklist of things that you kind of need to ask yourself about whether or not you're making the right decisions on something. So today, as it relates to, of course, handbags, I'm going to share with you my sanity checks of all the things that I have to kind of go through to make sure that I'm making well-informed decisions. Because sometimes, as much as the emotional excitement of lusting after a bag is exciting and just kind of sweeps us all off of our feet, sometimes I gotta kind of check in with the logical side and to make sure that I'm not gonna regret it down the road, and that I'm not just buying things willy-nilly, and that I'm curating my bag collection for me. So share with me, what are some of your sanity checks that you kind of go through for yourself, and let us all read them in the comments, because I think that's going to be really helpful for us so that we all can sort of avoid some of these mistakes. So the first thing I'm going to mention is let's avoid being hypnotized into the hyped influencer bag of the moment. And I think we all know what we're talking about here. And I think it varies from year to year, season to season. Back in the day, it was when Dior came back out with their saddlebags. And back then, Dior gifted all these saddlebags to all these influencer types, and everyone at 12 o'clock hit the send button and everyone's social media lit up with,
oh, here's my favorite bag of the season. It's the Dior saddlebag. I love it so much, and da-da-da-da-da.
Today, it's like the Margot bag from the Row, and that's the new it bag. So I would just say, like, let's kind of make sure that we're not getting sucked into that hypnosis. And, you know, at some point, it was also the Louis Vuitton multi-pochette accessoire. That is a mouthful. Now, I will say, as hyped as this was back then, I knew it was a good purchase off the bat just because of its functionality and how utilitarian it is. The fact that you could take these pieces apart was really game changer for me. The fact that I was already looking at the regular pochette at the time before it discontinued, it just made sense that this was a good purchase for me, and I have no regrets about it at all. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with buying hyped bags or it bags or anything like that, but I am saying that it's very easy to fall into that trap of being hypnotized. So I would just say, be wary. Now, the next important sanity check I always ask myself is knowing what is your neutral color, not what is a neutral color. Because if you say, what's a neutral color, then I would say something like this, like a beige or a brown or caramel, whatever you want to call it. This is probably your classic neutral conventional color, if you want to call something a neutral as it relates to handbags. But neutral could work for everyone as it relates to maybe like a wall color, but I don't think these kinds of neutral colors are neutrals for everyone, and certainly not for me. And I would say that this is, yes, a neutral color, very functional as it relates to styling it with outfits or whatever, but it doesn't excite me, and it doesn't really do anything for me. And if you put it in context to a handbag and what's a neutral color, I would say this is a neutral color for me than this is. And this is kind of like a non-color for me in some ways. And I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way, because I think this is neutral for lots of people, and it really works for their wardrobe, and it really works for their style or their skin tone or whatever it might be. But whatever your neutral is, it should work for your wardrobe, but it should also excite you. And this, as I said, doesn't really excite me or do anything for me, which is probably why this is not heavily worn in my rotation. But instead, I would say this is my neutral color. And any shade of green is really my neutral color. And that makes sense, because for me, green has always been a color I've gravitated towards, because green really evokes a lot of natural colors for me. You know, obviously, green is very earthy and very much part of our environment, but I feel like the greens really work with my wardrobe, but it also excites me, and it really feels very natural for me. Whereas this feels a little bit less natural for me. This feels a little bit more forced. This feels more like, yeah, I'm home. This is me. So I would say a neutral is only a neutral if it's a neutral for you. And not all neutrals are for everyone. And certainly the conventional colors of what's considered neutral, like black, white, or beige, is not going to work for everyone. It may not go with everybody's wardrobe in a complementary way. The next thing on my sanity checklist is really to limit the number of special occasion bags. And what I mean by that is that I can get really sucked into the really intricate, beautiful, fanciful, beaded, crystal-y, or, you know, feathery, whatever it is, like those really fancy, beautiful, intricate bags. They're just so gorgeous. There's just no denying that those are the types of bags that I really naturally gravitate towards. Sometimes it's a beaded bag, and this is not a fancy beaded bag. This is, you know, a faux pearl bag from Zara that I got many years ago that I really actually love. And I wouldn't even necessarily call this a special occasion bag because I can easily wear this crossbody with a pair of jeans and feel good about it. But for some people, this is like something that they might wear to a fancy occasion. These are two very different price points, but for me, I'm not really talking about price point for making my point. And for me, I think it's just about taking up valuable real estate and really kind of cluttering your collection with too many fanciful bags if you're not living a fanciful life. And I don't live a fanciful life. I live a very mundane life, and that's my reality. But I do make room for the occasional, very special occasion bag. Now, have I worn this during the day? I absolutely have, and I have no problem with that. You can wear any kind of bag at any time of day, it doesn't matter. But what I'm just saying is that sometimes there are certain bags that feel a little bit more special occasion. And if you don't have that many special occasions to go to, whether it be galas, fundraisers, weddings, like I'm not in a season of my life where I'm going to any weddings really. What I'm saying is that because I'm really attracted to the really fanciful, what could be easily deemed as special occasion bags, or let's say less day bags, I know I'm not going to use them that often. And because I'm so easily attracted to those, I really need to rein myself in and be realistic about how much use am I actually getting out of these bags and how many do I actually need. And I think having just a couple of them in my collection is enough. So I think that's just something to consider if you're someone like me who gets really pulled into the gorgeous, intricate bags. The next checkpoint I'm going to mention is to really be considered about what is your current lifestyle like? What is the current life that you're living right now? Like, are you a student? Are you someone who works a lot and travels a lot for work? Are you someone who works from home? And so considering the reality of what your life is today is something really important to consider. On the other hand, I think it's also really important to consider what your foreseeable future might look like. So how your lifestyle might change in the next 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years as you see it. If you know, for instance, that you're going to be changing jobs, going from the office to working from home, or maybe you're moving from a big city to farm country, or maybe you're planning to have a baby and you know your lifestyle is going to change dramatically. Those are things I think you should consider before you go down a path of buying too many of the same type of lifestyle bag, if you know what I mean. The next thing I'm going to say is that size matters. Get your mind out of the gutter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about bags. So if you know that you're the person who is a pack rat and needs to carry everything with you in the kitchen sink as a just-in-case measure, then that's hard to downsize for some people. Some people just really love that huge wallet and can't downsize to a smaller wallet. And you need to carry a really big hobo bag or a really big tote bag. And that's your lifestyle and that's your preference. Some people are really just about having something that's going to fit your very basics and you're good to go. So kind of knowing what that sweet spot is for you and what you tend to gravitate towards on a daily daily basis is a sanity check that I like to always consider. The weight of a bag is also really important to me. If you have physical limitations for some reason, for me, I have chronic neck and shoulder issues. I just can't carry a bag that's too big. That's why I only have a couple of big tote bags. For me, I do find myself looking at a lot of tote bags because I'm like, they're so pretty. There's so many different options and varieties. And as pretty and as functional as they are, which is probably what I really love out of tote bags, is the functionality of it. I also know that I've got physical limitations that won't allow me to comfortably carry it on a daily basis. And so I really have to question myself when I'm considering these types of big bags. And I'm like, no, just keep it moving. The next sanity checklist item is to listen to that inner voice. So often we ignore that inner voice and we're just like, we'll deal with it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But if you've got any kind of nagging feeling about something that you think might annoy you for any reason, do not ignore that feeling. That's your gut speaking to you. And generally speaking, I think it's important to listen to your gut anyway. So I think we need to get used to listening to that inner voice sometimes, because if it's not quite the color that you're looking for, then don't settle. If the strap is really annoying or just not hitting you at the right spot because it's too long or it's too short, that's valid. And I don't think that we should ignore those things. If the zipper or magnetic closure is really annoying, or there's a chain that's really noisy, and you know as you walk with that bag it's gonna just keep making that clacking noise, that's valid. And so don't ignore those feelings and listen to your inner voice when you know something's gonna annoy you. Now, oftentimes there's not going to be that perfect handbag, and I'm not saying to wait for that perfect handbag to come along. I think we all make some allowances or compromise to some extent. But what I'm saying is that there are certain things that you know are gonna annoy you, and don't ignore that, because if it's gonna annoy you when you're thinking about purchasing the bag, it's definitely gonna annoy you after you purchase the bag. So just kind of avoid the headache and the return process and the regret that you might feel, and just listen to the inner voice. The next sanity check that's super important to do is to do your homework. And by that, I mean do your research. And that could be watching lots of YouTube reviews. Hi, I do lots of them too. So you can check out my library of handbag reviews, but don't just listen to me, watch lots of other reviews, because everyone's got different perspectives and pros and cons as they see it, or different lifestyles. And those different perspectives are really gonna give you a comprehensive view on whether a handbag's gonna work for you. And at these price points, I think it's really important to kind of make the best informed decision as you can. But aside from watching reviews, I would also recommend that if there's a handbag that you're after and that you're eyeing for a long time, obviously, yes, try it on in store, but oftentimes you can't try it on in store because maybe it's not available where you live. And if that's the case, if there's a website that you're looking at that has that particular bag, Google that same bag and look for it on different websites. And the reason I say that is because lots of times different websites will have different pictures. So you can see different perspectives on how that bag actually looks. So whether it be looking at it from different angles or different model sizes, that's really important. Sometimes you'll see pictures of the interior of the bag, but other websites don't offer that. Sometimes other websites will have more descriptions, and those are things that you might want to know. The other thing is I also Google it on Pinterest, because on Pinterest, I like to see how it might look on different types of people with different types of outfits against different types of colors. So that's another way of kind of doing your homework and doing a little bit more research and getting a little bit more comfort on buying a bag before you actually pull the trigger. The next thing on my sanity checklist is kind of going along the same things of what I said in the beginning, which is about hyped bags. But don't fall into the trance of being in love with a bag. And oftentimes when you're going down a rabbit hole of research, you fall even more in love with the bag. And you go down this trance of like, oh my God, and then it kind of borderlines like obsessing over the bag because you keep watching more reviews and you just want to be sure. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think then sometimes you do fall into this trance and you're like, you can't see anything wrong with this bag. You've already made up your mind, and that might be the right choice for you, but what I like to do is just take a little pause. So that means I might add it to cart and I'll walk away. That might be leaving the bag for 24 hours, that might be for 48 hours, that might be a week, that might be 2 months. In some cases, it's been a few years for me. Whatever that time frame is for you, I would just say, put it in your cart, but walk away and just leave some space for you to breathe and sort of come down from the high, and then consider the bag. When you look at it from a fresh perspective, from a fresh head, sometimes you'll see things a little bit more clearly and you might feel a little bit differently. And sometimes that might mean leaving the bag and just kind of moving on from it. And that's also kind of a good feeling because you're like, oh, good, I kind of broke the trance. The next sanity check I always kind of ask myself is, do I have something similar? That means sometimes I go back to my handbag shelf and I often have a picture of it on my camera roll, and I'll just look at it and be like, do I have anything very similar? And I often do that because for me, I don't like buying duplicates of the same bag in the same silhouette, even if it's a different color. Now, I have made exceptions to that, the Fendi baguette in the medium size being the exception, and I will probably make exceptions here and there in the future. But what I'm saying is that you don't want too many bags that will serve the same purpose, because, and at least what I find for myself, is that I don't like competing with bags, because if there's 2 bags that serve the same purpose, that do the same thing with an outfit and functionality and look-wise or style-wise, I find that I'll just gravitate towards one bag more than the other. That means the other bag kind of gets neglected and doesn't get used and is kind of shoved in the corner. So I don't really like that feeling, and I like having to be able to enjoy all of my bags at some point. And yes, there will be some bags that might sit on my shelf for 6 months, 9 months, or a year, and they won't get touched for a little while, but that's okay. And I find that to be a little bit different because they eventually will find their way back into my rotation at some point. But what I'm saying is that when you find that there are 2 bags that kind of do the same thing and they're just competing against each other, you'll always find yourself probably favoring one bag over the other. So just something to consider. The final question that I'll often ask myself before I'm considering buying a bag is, if I don't buy this bag, can I put that money towards something better? And that better could be anything. That better could be a holy grail bag or my dream bag, but it doesn't have to be another bag. Maybe that other thing could be a home renovation project. Could that money go towards that and be better served and better used and bring me more joy? Or it could be a new appliance, or it could be a new gadget, or whatever it might be. But if you think that that money could go towards something better to better your life in some way, then I think that's a pretty good barometer check for you. So that's my sanity checklist, and that's some of the questions that I kind of have brewing in my head before I buy any handbag. I want to make sure I'm pretty considered because I like having a curated collection, or just bring me long-term joy and not just short-term lust. And I think that's the difference in making sure that I'm feeling good about whatever I'm buying. So I hope you found this helpful, but please tell me, what is on your sanity checklist, or do you have a sanity checklist? So if you do have any sanity checks that you have for yourself, then share those with us in the comments for all of us to read, because I think they're really helpful in making not only informed decisions, but making the right decisions for yourself, because we're all different. We all have different lifestyles and preferences, and there's a lot of external noise out there, and there's a lot of things that say, do this, don't do that, buy this, don't buy that. And when you can filter some of those things out and make better informed decisions for ourselves, I think we're better off. And I think we're going to be a lot happier and satisfied with the handbags that we do end up purchasing when we can filter all those things out. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, I would really love it if you hit the thumbs up button. That really helps my small channel out. If you want to binge watch some of my other videos, you can do that here, and I will see you next time.